Welcome to the Spiritual Principles Made Practical podcast. I'm your host, Scott Friedman, and today we have a repeat guest, Brownell Landrum. And the reason that she's a repeat guest is because, as the sensitive, honest mystic she is, she has new and exciting inspiration to share with us. And that's always an exciting thing to have happen. So tell us about your new inspiration, and we'll open our minds and our hearts to experience what you have to share with us. How about it?
That sounds good. Yeah. When we talked before, we covered a lot of ground and a lot of different kinds of ways of looking at things. But I started telling about my story, and I had written, I launched a trilogy, I think, but actually after we talked, but before you released it. But I launched a trilogy and that I've been working on for years. So that culmination all happened. And as a writer, it's been a year of editing and marketing. And so finally it's like, can I get back to writing, right? Because that's what feeds my energy. But I also launched a story that I called The End, a Love Story to the Universe. And that's my most personal story to date. I changed the names to protect the guilty. Um, but it's a short story, free to anybody who wants to read it. 9,000 words, so it's pretty quick. And I'll get kind of do a recap of that. But um, the what happened is I reached out to you because in the last week, all of a sudden, this concept for a part two to that story has come up, and it just feels so powerful and so timely that I thought, let's talk. Let's just see what Scott thinks about it, because I think it's a spiritual principle made practical. Um, and just a quick background is that I wrote this story this year, and as I was writing, it's called The End, a Love Story to the Universe. And as I'm writing it, I realize I'm writing characters that I'm writing it from the point of view of what I call the upstairs, right? And so that there's a team upstairs that's guiding me to write this story. And it's about a man that I met when I was in Tunisia early this year. And so I write the story, get it out, offer it to people. People are loving it. Some people even said they thought it was a college course, all this stuff. And I think, it's called The End, right? I thought it was the end. All of a sudden, in the last, couple of months, the team upstairs is telling me there's a part two. And sometimes you can't miss those messages, right? If they're telling me there's a part two, there's a part two. And the whole phenomena of writing this thing, the first part and now, even more now, really, is they're telling me what to write. And so I'm writing and it's coming true. And then, but I'm like, but if I write it, does it come true? Or do I have to wait till they tell me what to write for it to come true? So it's like this crazy kind of dynamic that I'm dealing with. And but maybe 2 weeks ago, I'm feeling really blocked. If anybody's also a writer or anybody launched any kind of business, or like you launched the podcast, you get all this energy and then you kind of like, okay, you can decompress and relax a little bit. You've done the big push. But I was just like, what is part two? They're telling me there's a part two. What is part two? And I'm feeling really blocked. And all of a sudden, I guess it was a little over a week ago, I call them like these idea orbs, and there's like this idea over here and an idea over here. And I had an idea from a few years ago with a title. And I thought, oh, I could write a movie or a song with that title. I like, sometimes you get a title, it's like that says it all. And then, but then so I thought, well, there's maybe a movie, there's that title. I got to write part two. And then a couple of months ago, I wrote and recorded a meditation with a topic. And then all of a sudden, the team is finally getting me to like see all of these things are fitting together. So that's all the preamble to say that the theme of it is Christmas is forgiveness.
Wow.
And
Unpack that for us.
yeah, I mean, first of all, just the title, right, is pretty
Yeah.
cool, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the double entendre of forgiveness, right? And the first verse in it is Christmas is for giving, Christmas is for grace, Christmas is for packages all tied up with lace, right? So you're like, what kind of song is this? Because it says for giving at the first, right? And then, but it's also for grace. And so I start writing the lyrics, and they come to me, and the chorus of the song is Christmas is for giving, forgiveness, Christmas is for friends, and it's up to each of us how our story ends,
Nice.
right?
Nice. Yeah.
So it's yes, it's Christmas and it's holiday, but it's really, it's not, it's secular, it's not for any particular religion. We can all kind of learn from this whole idea of forgiveness. And tying it into the story that I wrote before, and this whole experience of meeting this man in Tunisia and everything that happened, and then seeing the need for forgiveness, right? And so it's just been really interesting. I'm sure you're going to ask some questions, so I won't keep rambling, but I started writing the part two, and I'm just having a blast, and I'm back in the creative flow.
So one of the things that's always of interest to me is that how does the acceptance of additional inspiration show up as a change in your physical circumstances, if at all?
Well, and as I was writing the first part, especially, there was, and the second part two as well. But the first part, as I've told you before, I was writing the story, and I'm thinking I'm writing characters. It's all written from the point of view of the upstairs. And like, how do we do this thing, and how do we orchestrate this connection? And then as I'm writing, I'm like, no, they're telling me who they are, and I'm just transcribing what they want. And so now, and then what would happen is I was just in this connection with this upstairs, is what I like to call it. And if I was doing something they wanted me to do, I would feel this burst of joy, like they could infuse me with so much joy. And if I wasn't, then either I was getting crickets, and that happened more than I want, or might even feel, sadness or frustration. And so it's like this constant need to be asking and be tuning in to what should I be doing here. And um, we can get caught up in the whole mentality of what, toxic positivity, right? So yes, I want that joy. Yes, I want that joy. And also, though, the downtimes are sometimes what propel us in the direction we need to go. So understanding that, so managing that energy, what I'm getting from them for part one, because it's called the end, right? I mean, that, that kind of spoiler. And yet I thought the end was the end, and now all of a sudden the end isn't the end. And they telling me there's more to the story. And then maybe I just had to be the end for a while, because I had to get my books out, and I had to focus on my podcast and all the things I needed to do.
Yeah.
And now writing part two, it's the flow, the physiology of the flow of being in that creative mode, and being able to be open to that. Because and I think you'll like this, the opening, totally spoiling the opening scene, but the opening scene is from the point of view of the upstairs, and they're waiting for something to happen, right? They've set something in motion that's going to happen on Earth, and they're waiting for it to happen. So they're playing a game that they like to play. I don't know where I got this. Well, actually, I do know where I got this idea, and this is probably them telling me their idea about what they're doing. I mean, like, it's so surreal. But I woke up the other morning with a sentence in my mind, and it said, "Huh, I've never been a marshmallow before." Exactly. Like, what does that mean? Everybody I've said that to, they just laugh. Like it's so absurd. What is that? And I'm waking up going, this is just too great. I mean, like, this is a great line. I have to remember line. So I'm writing the opening scene, and I'm like, I have to have that line, right? That has to be the opening sentence of the scene. And what they're doing is they're listening to punchlines and then having to come up with the joke that fits the punchline.
Okay.
which is super fun, right? So they're just laughing, so they're just having fun. And the message within that is when they are having a lot of fun, we feel it on earth. Like
Yeah,
we're able to feel their expressions of joy. And so it was really fun to write that. But that was a funny scene as they're like
that's
that
funny.
laughing their butts off on, oh, I've never been a marshmallow before.
That is funny. So,
So yeah, anyway, go ahead.
well, one of the things that, I'm having, I don't know if I would say similar experiences, but for me, it's really when I'm in the flow, living what I'm supposed to live. I do find myself inspired and all the things that you talked about, right? And when I don't, it's a dark place. And one of the things that I've tried to remember when I get into that place is that depression is just a sign that there's an opportunity for me to listen more closely.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And that's the best response I can have to depression is to say, I'm going to stop everything and listen more closely because this is a sign that I'm missing something and I need to slow down and pay more attention.
Yeah, we talked about that. And I know we had another talk where we talked about like how the body gives us messages,
Yeah.
right? And so if the body is if you're feeling something in your body, and whether it's depression or, because one thing I found really fascinating that I read in research, and I actually tried it recently, and it really did kind of help. And I don't know if it was, placebo effect or what, but is that when you really feel like heartache, that Advil helps, like a painkiller helps. And I think that's really, really interesting. But yeah, so if your body is feeling something, then you have to tune in. The first book I wrote is called Five Reasons Why Bad Things Happen. And one of the bad reasons why bad things happen is subconscious sabotage. It's when your body is saying, I don't want to do that, and arguing with you about whatever path that you think you want to go on. And then you get in this argument and it will sabotage you because it doesn't want to go there. And if you listen to your body, you can get the body to, you know, cooperate to a certain level. And so, if you're having a like depression, then the question is, okay. And I mean, I believe me, I've been through heartache this year, right? So I certainly know the feeling of that depth. And also I know there was so much learning in that. Like each thing propelled me forward. And I had so many friends, and I don't know about your world, Scott, but and so many friends say, red flag, don't go there, don't try that, don't take that risk, don't go to Tunisia, don't go to these things, don't. And it's really easy to be a naysayer, but it's a lot harder to be a yay-sayer, right? To encourage people to just take the risk, and like, I'm here with tissues of champagne, whichever way it goes. I'm your friend, and you got this, even if it's hard.
Yeah, I had a friend tell me the other day. She says to me, she says, I'm so grateful for you because you accept me how I am, and it's like, and I can understand where so much of commonly held thought is just flat out wrong, right? So that if we get inspiration that's contrary to that, then there's a lot of people that are likely to say that's the wrong road. And I've really tried to, as much as possible, fill my life up with supportive people and people that can feel the energy behind what I'm thinking, saying, and doing, and encourage me. And I remember one guy said, he said, wow, man, when you shared what you were going to do, I just got like this huge burst of love, man, go for it. And I was like, okay, it's like, yeah, you're the kind of guy I want in my life.
That's right. Like somebody literally just today on Facebook posted something about like what's the most important quality in a friend, and I said, I need a yay sayer, not a naysayer.
Yeah.
You know, and there're just too many people that it's really easy to tell you not to. But if we tie in the whole spiritual component, we're guided to this place and this person and this situation for a reason. And it's for us to learn something. I mean, again, I wrote the book, people say things happen for a reason. It's like, yeah, I literally wrote the book on it. Um, and so it happened for a reason. What's the reason? Because if you walk away from this opportunity, then either you're going to miss the lesson of the gift in it that could be just incredibly beautiful to get you to a path that is where you need to be. And I look at this year, and even with the hard things, because I mean, I still don't know where I'm going to live. I don't know where I'm going. I'm totally at their mercy. And yet, um, I just I have to be, somebody said, what's the difference between trust and faith? I'm like, I don't know. But you need people around you. It's like, you know what, Scott, you can do it. Whatever it is, you can do it. And you know what? If you don't, you'll still get through it. You'll be fine, and you're going to learn something. And you might stub your toe. And guess what? Your toe is going to heal. And who knows what's going to happen? But if you don't, like the course is saying, you miss every basket you don't shoot
Yeah,
for, whatever the
right.
expression is, but it's just so important to just be able to, to try and go for it. Because, if you walk away from this relationship or this opportunity or this situation, you're probably going to run into that again. Like,
Yeah,
um,
the lessons they become increasingly unavoidable.
that's a great way to put it. Yeah, absolutely, exactly. It's like you're gonna hit that wall, and it's like with healing. Like if somebody can come in and say, "I'm going to heal you magically," well, you got whatever you got for a reason. So if you go in and heal it, that reason is still there.
Right,
But if you can get to the reason, the healing happens,
right, right.
right? And
No,
so this,
I'm a huge, studier of cause and effect, right?
yes,
And
exactly.
and I like the thing that you talked about that I probably related most strongly to is this idea that um, the joy and the inspiration of being in the flow and feeling that energy move through you and stuff is like there's nothing like it, right? I mean, it's like that's the most attractive thing there is. And so if we are feeling that in the current moment, then you've got that, you got it all, right? You've got like the goal and everything that's important and valuable about it. And then the challenge for me and sometimes is to accept like some of the thoughts that come along with that. And so I'll give you I'll give you at least one example, and that is that because I've been inspired to do all these, have all this positive contribution in the world, right? Make win-win thinking the dominant thinking in the world, and so on and so on. Uh, and in my meditation, I got, yeah, that's all true, but that's only going to be an effect. That isn't actually something that you have to focus on. That's something that will happen automatically. What you have to focus on is accepting yourself and your own and the truth of you being, one with all things and stuff. And so I'm going like, well, seems like a pretty big step for me to go from thinking of myself as a discrete individual to thinking of to letting that go and thinking of myself as one with all things and everyone is part of me and stuff. And I'm like, how does that work? And then I'll get like a little smidgen of inspiration about, how to do that in terms of, for example, I think about that little story where the Indians couldn't see Cortez sailing into Mexico because they had no mental concept of a sailing ship.
Right,
So
the
they couldn't
unintentional
actually
blindness.
see it,
Right, right.
right? And so
Yeah,
that, in a way that says to me that I can only see in other people what I have in myself. So using that sort of example, that situation as an example, right? So that if I can see something in you, then I have it, then it's part of me.
interesting. That's
And so
interesting.
so that's like a little tidbit that I'm okay, that feels right, And so so I have this sort of overall global view of, be present, live in, eternal joy and boundless love, right? Okay, good. Yeah, sign me up. And then the unique road for me to get from where I am to that place.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, to weave it back into the whole forgiveness thing, right? Because
Right.
as I said, I came up with a meditation. I actually came up with it when I was in Tunisia, and then I thought, okay, I'm going to write it down and record it and offer it to anybody who wants it for free. It's only 5 minutes, but it's exactly in alignment with what you're just saying, which is, first you think of the person that you want to forgive. And often that manifests in the body, by the way. Like you still have residual, it could be something from childhood or from decades ago. In my case, there was a situation like from decades ago, and I was still holding on to this resentment, and that's not good for anybody. And so I was sitting there thinking, okay, I've got to forgive this person. I've got to let this go. And so I did this kind of meditation, and it was a walking meditation. Like it's not like I had to be in some deep trance or anything. But the first thing is you forgive that person, and it's just an energy you send, right? It's no attachment to anything. It's not oh, I'm going to let them back in my life or something crazy like
Right.
that.
Right.
But it is, first I forgive that person, and then I realize I have to forgive the people that hurt that person, that caused them to be where they were,
Good point. Good point.
right?
Yeah.
So it's like all of a sudden hurt people, right? So that person wouldn't have hurt me if they hadn't been hurt before.
Right. Exactly.
And so all of a sudden now I've got this whole world of the people that forgiving to all of the people that hurt that person. And now that person is lifted from their weight of their resentment because they're able to kind of secondhand forgive the people that hurt them. And then you turn the energy back to yourself and you say, okay, I have to forgive myself for being in the position to allow that to happen. Some part of me was there that allowed that to happen. Now, some people hold it as shame. Some people, whatever their energy that they attach to it. But I have to forgive myself, and that means I have to forgive my body because my body was there. And as you and I've talked about, the body has a separate consciousness. So you got to have that relationship with the body and your spirit or guides or whatever, upstairs or whatever you want to call them. You know what? They weren't really there either, or were they, or what? But and then you also have to go to your own ancestry, right? Like what part of my ancestry is still that do I need to forgive? Because there's something there too. So all of a sudden at the end of the meditation, there is, a room full of, dozens, hundreds of souls, and they could not be here anymore, right? But their souls still exist. And so send out the energy of forgiveness to all of that. It was just incredible lightening up now, like you said, uplifting, that's what it does, literally lifting it up. Like I
So,
always say, when people say, don't give up, I'm like, oh yeah, give it up. Send it to the higher power. It ain't my problem anymore. I'm just going to give that one up. Anyway, I just was curious what you thought about all that.
well, I kind of want to dig deeper into like the actual forgiveness because um, I'll tell you what my understanding of forgiveness is, and I'm always looking to sort of expand and correct anything that's not right
Yeah, I
about
have a whole chapter on forgiveness, my first book.
it.
So
Okay, good. All right, good. Because
yeah.
so when I got started in the mortgage business, one of the things that I realized is that two things. One, there was the opportunity to get angry every 5 seconds, and two, that I had to make a choice. Either I was going to hold on to the anger and be stuck, or saying, these people did me wrong, and I just need to let it go because that's the only way I can move on. And so I ended up thinking of forgiveness as a exercising self-respect of saying, realizing that if I hang on to this grievance, it's going to stop my progress. And so as a matter of self-respect, I'm going to let go of the grievance so I can move forward. And then when I saw myself moving forward and was able to extract the learning out of the situation, I felt that I had forgiven it because I took that as a sign that I had forgiven it because I was no longer stuck. And so that's my experience of forgiveness and stuff. And I want to hear what your experience is in a way that maybe I can add to my experience and make it more effective and
Yeah, I think it's all woven in. I mean, and like I said, my first book, I have a chapter on forgiveness. By the way, it's free too, if anybody wants to read that chapter. Um, and so I've got kind of my before and then my now, right, perspective.
right.
Because the meditation I just took you through is the now, which is just, it has none of the garbage associated with forgiveness. It's just an energy flow, right? But you got to look at the garbage too, right? That's important. And so that one of the things I put in there is like, if somebody wants to be forgiven, they need to go through 4 steps.
Okay.
Okay. The first step is they have to apologize, and that has to be sincere. Like they really have to be apologetic and they have to be sorry. The second is they have to admit the wrongdoing. I mean, they have to know what they did wrong. The third is they make amends. And the fourth is they never do it again. Okay. And that's if somebody wants back in your life and they want to be forgiven, they have to be going through that. Because I came up with a quote. It's like, an apology without change is manipulation. And forgiveness without change is codependence. Yeah, you can think about those for a while,
Yeah,
right?
no, it's just
But
like
if you're talking about in a relationship and there's somebody, like I used to have a friend who said, "Oh, just apologize to keep the peace." I'm like, if you're not sincere and you don't know what you did wrong and you're going to do it again, that's manipulation, right? So
yeah.
that apology is it does more harm than it does good. And if you're constantly forgiving somebody who's not going to change, you got to look at your issues about being too attached to something that's not good for you. So you got to love yourself enough for that. So there is that whole dynamic of what forgiveness is, because some people say, "Oh, you forgive for yourself, not for the other person." Certainly, and I'll just tell you a story. I used to be a hospice volunteer for many years, and I volunteered at a bereavement camp for kids that was just really powerful. And one year we had a kid in our cabin, and it was girls, mostly like 16 years old, most of them were. And there was a girl in our cabin who was really, and this was kids for kids who lost somebody, a bereavement camp, right? So they could have lost it through hospice or through a number of things. I don't remember exactly who this, I think she might have lost a sibling or something, but she was like taking stuff from people. She was bullying people. She was causing all these problems. And eventually I had to go say, she's out of here. Like I have to protect my girls, my other girls. And then the girls together, we had to come through a whole forgiveness experience, right? And we were like, but we were angry, right? There was a lot of hurt and a lot of, and these are wounded, hurt kids anyway,
Right,
right?
right.
So these kids have been through a lot to have to go through something else to have a trauma within our own cabin. And so we were like, okay, we're going to forgive her from afar.
Yeah.
You know, send her good energy, hope for her healing, but not in our life anymore. So we're not going to let that go back in. I mean, and so, I mean, seriously, she's a hurt person. And so now, kind of as I look at this new meditation, to send her, forgive her, because something hurt her too. And so release that energy that's going from us. And I also have another meditation that is for chakra cord cutting, so that if you're feeling too attached to somebody and you need to start again, and you've got too many, like I did this meditation once with somebody, and there was like, it felt like the cords were like barbed wire. I mean, they needed to be cut. Now they could be rebuilt, but they weren't going to be rebuilt on that kind of nastiness. But anyway, that's kind of how I look at it. Is it's not a la-di-da thing, and it's also not saying what they did was okay, right? What they
Yeah.
did was not okay. And karma will work that out. But if you can kind of this whole idea of Christmas is forgiveness, and how's your story end? It is really up to us to figure that out. And if it's just an energy release of like, I'm just gonna, because, and then you start forgiving the people who hurt them, because somebody hurt them. And maybe you can lighten it up for everybody.
Well, I have a story to tell you that I want to hear your input on. Okay.
Okay.
So as my older brother is 5 years older than I am, and he, beat me up and basically took took joy in terrorizing me, or at least it seemed that way when I was a child. And as an adult, he came and he said, look, I'm really sorry for what I did to you, and so on and so on. And one of the things and I just took the attitude that, okay, that was then, that was now, okay, fine, but I still don't trust them, because he's done things, as not recently, but as adults that were not good. And but I never taken the thought to that he was, somebody hurt him. I don't know. It's like, maybe I hurt him because like I caused him to like not be an only child anymore. I don't know. But I don't know. I'm wondering if there's the potential for a better relationship there, or whether I should just keep it where it is now, which is we have usually almost an hour-long cordial conversation on his birthday and on my birthday, and that's pretty much the only contact we have. And so everything is cordial and stuff, and we have real conversation, but it's only on our birthdays.
Right.
And I'm wondering, is there value in trying to build a more robust and open relationship? And my sense is the decision that I have been making is no, that he's not. If if I wasn't related to him, would I want him in my life?
Right.
And the answer is like, absolutely not.
Well, there are a few things. One is, one of my favorite, but most impactful memes I've seen is it said, that if kids are so resilient, why do adults need therapy? So we're holding on to so much of that childhood stuff. And there's, truthfully, this story, the end, and that whole scenario is dealing with that, right? In fact, the part 2 of the story is a lot of dealing with that, just a total teaser into that, right? Because these childhood wounds can be, really easy to hide, but also really powerful to stick with us, even into our age, right? As you get
Oh yeah, no,
Right.
I've never felt safe in the world since that time. I've never.
Right, exactly. And so you've got this whole dynamic of that, and you go, okay, there's still the wound there. Then you also are going to ask, what's the motivation behind his apology? Is part 1, and part 2 is, why did he do it? Like, what was his motivation back then? Who was hurting him?
Well,
Something was hurting him, or he wouldn't have done that to you. And I don't think it was you hurting him. I think you were the surrogate for something that was
I
hurting.
can tell you what he told me. He told me that he was jealous of me because I could have an openness and a conversation with our mother that he didn't feel he could have.
So if you put yourself in that position, that's got to hurt him, right? He's hurting, but it's not your fault.
Yeah, it's like, well, it's like I didn't tell you couldn't talk to mom.
No, it's not your fault, but you can just, as far as seeing how he might feel, right?
Yeah, no, I can see it. And to this day, he still talks about, the biggest problem in his life is loneliness, and so
Now, if we weave this
deeply connecting with people is not something he has been very successful at.
So, and we take that, and now we add the layer of spiritual principles, right? we add the layer of our spiritual connection and his spiritual connection. And we didn't get into this, I don't think, before, but I do believe that before we're born, we do some planning about what are some key components of our
Oh
life,
yeah. Oh yeah.
right? So
Absolutely.
on some level, you chose your family.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And so did he.
Yes.
Um, and we don't know if there's a karmic reincarnation past that could be part of it.
Don't care.
Um, well, you're certainly you have the right not to care. I'm just saying that you don't have to know what that is to just be able to do this meditation and just release and forgive. Like, it something in him is hurting from somewhere, sometime, someplace, or he
Right.
wouldn't have done that. And so you can have enormous compassion for doesn't excuse what he did. No, I have compassion for your poor little young self too. Like, I mean, like my heart goes out to that. So I'm not diminishing,
No, no, I understand what you're saying.
your pain. But in terms of this, like this whole meditation or this, maybe it's Christmas is going to be your time for forgiveness, right? Doesn't mean you have to let him in your life. If he's not somebody you want to spend time with, you don't want to spend time with, right? But you want to heal. If there's a wound there, you want to heal it, because that you don't want to take forward. That's not good
Well,
for you or for him, right? On an energy level.
yeah, well, absolutely. And, this whole discussion, has just brought all of this up for me. I haven't thought about it in a long time. Right.
Well,
But
I hope it brings up for listeners, right? That they're
yeah,
hearing.
so it just brought up to me. It's like, I'm starting to have the thoughts like, maybe there is the potential for a really great relationship there. Maybe not, but maybe, and certainly, I mean, I know a lot about connecting with other people,
Yeah, of
and,
course.
and I, and I've written and I've proven every which way that the more connected I am to myself, the more connected I am to other people. And, and that's the solution. And to be open with other people oftentimes, not 100% of the time, but oftentimes inspires them to be open back.
Yeah.
And I mean, and so I mean, and in some ways, I have a lot to offer him in the respect that, um, you know, if I could communicate all of this to him effectively, it would make a big difference for him.
Yeah, I think, I mean, this totally, my advice for whatever it's worth is you can do a lot of this on an energetic level without necessarily having him in your life. I also have a meditation for clearing so that if there's any kind of dark energy around him, I mean, he could just be, and this, I know this is getting into the woo-woo stuff, but all I know is this meditation I have for clearing, I always feel lighter afterwards. I mean, like, even if I think it's crap, I feel better, right? So who
Right.
cares? If you feel better, it's doing something, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
every time is more than just it is a statistically significant thing, right? And so basically it's a meditation where you normally do it for yourself, saying, I'm going to release all of these, I locate and bind and release all these energies, negative energies, blocks, curses, hexes, blah, 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 all these kind of, whatever words, cooties, you want to use. And it also really helps to do it as a surrogate for someone else. Either you're holding their hand and releasing those energies, or you're like, okay, I'm going to be a surrogate for this person for 5 minutes and release these
Really,
negative energies.
really.
And
And you've seen that work.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
really interesting. And so, because again, this is woo-woo stuff I can't explain,
I
scientifically,
don't
but I
care how woo it is, if it works, sign me
yeah,
up.
well, yeah, and these dark energies, it's like when they attach to you, they don't want to go away, and they prevent you from any progress. And certain behaviors and activities will draw them to you. And the worst part about it is when when they're really affecting you, is when you don't want to do the meditation to remove them because they don't want to be removed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, they have some sort of intelligence to them. But to do that and do that for yourself, or do it together, or go back to when your childhood and imagine you were doing it together, whatever feels right to do it, but just releasing that garbage just for whatever reason, and you basically take it and you send it to the light and repolarize it and transform it into the highest purpose of light and love. So it's a really simple few minutes meditation, just like the forgiveness one's just a few simple, and the chakra one's what, 7 or 8 minutes or something.
But
Um, but
I
it can really help. It's weird stuff, but it can help.
I'm totally intrigued with the concept that I could put myself in their shoes and, you know, do that healing and forgiveness by, being in the, by imagining being them, if you will.
Yeah.
And have that be, I mean, I'm captivated by that idea. I am going to get on that.
Yeah, in fact, I did something similar with somebody a few months ago, and this was somebody really spiraling, and so I did something kind of similar, and then like a week later, I talked to their friend, and the friend's like, "Oh my God, this week everything's gotten so much better for them." Yeah,
Well, I'm gonna
you
do
can
that
do.
because I mean
We got powers. You got power. You didn't know it.
absolutely, because I mean, I want everybody to do well, right? And when I see people who aren't doing well, I'm always like, well, they're part of me. What can I do? And so it kind of fits with all of that of like I'm part of everybody, right? It's sort of another
Right.
aspect
That's
of
why I said it fits
yeah,
totally with your vibe.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's kind of another aspect of like, here's another way thing that I can do that once again enhances my experience of being one with all things.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Because on some level you are, and so if you lift his energy, it's going to lift your energy. It's going to lift the planet's energy. Just think of all the people, just like the meditation, all the people that are affected,
yeah,
or that are impacted. Same with this. You lift somebody, and there's a lot of people that are impacted. It could be just, the person at the grocery store that maybe he'll smile to that makes their day. I mean, you never know little things like that. But if he's being held down with that kind of dark energy, I mean, and they, it's just, and I always feel like, of course, the question is you don't want to interfere with somebody else's stuff, right? But there's never a reason not to lift dark energy off of them. I mean, it's always going to be a good thing to do. Like,
right.
like, I mean, I have a chapter in my first book about prayer too, and it's like, does prayer work or not? Well, if you're praying for somebody to get better, but their goal isn't to get better, their goal is to either move on or their goal is to learn something before they can get better. Do you take away that lesson? No, because that's kind of not your place, right? But to take away the dark energy, to lift their energy, to help them go through the process, whatever it is, easier, I don't see how there's any bad juju from that.
And I mean, the people that I want to do this with, it's like, oh my goodness, this one and this one and this one and this one. Because
It's good, and it takes
I
a
mean,
few minutes.
I'm gonna,
I do walking down the street. I mean, like, you can do it. You don't have to be, like, in some heavy trance or anything. You
yeah,
can just
yeah. I
totally
mean,
do it.
I can promise you, I'm gonna put this baby to the test.
Good, I can't wait to hear what happens.
Yeah, because I mean, there's so many people that I care about that are struggling, right? And it's like, and you always want to do like, well, what can I do to ease your suffering, right? And
Yes,
if I can make this work, this could dramatically ease the suffering of like, all kinds
the
of people.
planet, the
Yeah,
planet.
exactly. Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, I just, I can't stop thinking of all the different people I so
Yeah. And
so
it's a hard one to remember to do. Like, I have a friend of mine, like, and I know she's like constantly attaching these things. I'm like, you've got to do this. Sometimes I do it several times a day if I'm really feeling in a funk. Like, and there are different things that you can do that make them more likely to attach to you, like drinking and drugs and things like that, because you're losing your consciousness, so your defenses aren't quite as strong. And so that's also a factor. But yeah, first thing out of the gate is just clear this crap out of the way so you can have a fighting chance to improve.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's funny because this fits with a bunch of other stuff that I've written and inspiration I have, and it fits perfectly with all of that. And it's like, well, how did I miss that piece? And it's like, oh well,
You didn't meet Brownell yet, and we had to
yeah,
have a part 2 and a part 3 of our talk. And this,
yeah,
and again, I mean, please remember it all ties to the forgiveness thing, too. I mean, that's a really important part because especially if you look at them and think they've been through a lifetime of these dark energies around them. I mean, on some level, it's not their fault. I mean, or at least they didn't have a fighting chance. You've got to at least clear that garbage out.
oh
Um,
yeah. No, I mean, trust me, I'm going to be putting this to the test, and I'm going to be observing with great attention what does or does not happen as a result. So I
yeah.
will. It has my attention.
Well, when you post it, then post all the results under it on the video so that we can look at all the, like, okay, this person, this is what you don't have to give their names or anything, but post the results so that the people watching this can see what
I
you're
think
seeing.
I think I'll post it as we did it, and then I can edit it anytime. So
Right.
I
No,
can
yeah, but I just mean as
edit.
far as in the comments
Yeah,
below, like,
yeah.
oh, something else happened. I just did it
Right,
again.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, like an ongoing thing, and maybe the people watching this will do it and then they can
Yeah, I mean,
post.
maybe.
Maybe we can make this a huge, that and the forgiveness, because again, I don't want to forget that. That's kind
Yeah,
of the big thing that they're telling me that I have to make sure that everybody knows because
yeah,
that's tied
absolutely,
into it all. Yeah.
absolutely. Wow. You never know where it's going to lead you, what twists and turns there are going to be. That's one of the reasons I love doing these podcasts, because I never know exactly what's going to happen. I haven't thought about my brother in a long time.
Well, it came up today for a reason,
And, and,
so
and,
it's ready to
and,
be healed.
and never in this context, never.
Yeah, yeah. We don't know where it's going forward, but it definitely feels like there's some more healing and some more light and love to
Yeah,
throw into it.
yeah, yeah. Very cool. Well, anything else that we should talk about?
No, just, that again, I just want people, whoever's watching to, and I want you, of course, to read the story and keep in touch with it because I think there's going to be a part 3. I don't know what they're going to tell me it is. But it's kind of like my ongoing growth of like, what do y'all want me to do? Okay, I'll write it. I don't know where
So,
it's going.
so how,
I'm
so,
going. I'm going back out of the country in a week. Then I don't know where I'm going after that. It's all just this
well,
this
so I,
wild.
I read one of the stories. How do I get the most recent one?
Well, the novels, launched a month ago, so that's new, and the first book is 99 cents, so just on my pitch. But I mean, I really want people to read that because I'm getting really great reviews and I'm really proud of it, and I worked a lot on it. And then part 2, I haven't finished writing it yet,
Oh,
but I'm about 1,000 words in. I think it's going to have probably another, couple thousand words. It's going to be short. The first one was 9,000 words. And I'm also in the process of getting actors to read it and record it so that I can put it on my podcast so people can listen to it as a story as well as read it as a story. So I'm excited about that too.
awesome. And I want to be I want to be a guest on your podcast.
Well, my podcast isn't an interview one.
Oh,
So
okay.
what I want to do with you is take a story from your books or from your life, or maybe from what you're doing right now and write it as a story. Because it's basically like basic writers write stories, we record them and people can listen to stories.
Okay.
So, and I mean, they can be fictional or factual. So you can get completely creative. A lot of people do. We got one for next week that's really fun. That's like a ghost story. But it's a comedic ghost story and it's just laugh out loud funny.
Oh,
So,
so we can all write our
yeah, so
story.
we want to add a story to viewers and we can put it on the show. I love it.
So everybody can write stories and submit them to you then. That's cool.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
Awesome.
I mean, we've got writers all around the world, and it's my goal. I mean, I really want to celebrate writers. We're on IMDb, so if somebody's got aspirations to be on IMDb, they can have IMDb credit, which is pretty big for a lot of writers.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I had a Hollywood producer reach out to me a couple of weeks ago and said, I want to learn more about what you're doing.
Awesome.
So, and it would give me, and I know you can relate to this, it would give me so much thrill. It doesn't have to be one of my stories, one of the other people's stories. If they get picked up and turned into something big, it would just give me a huge joy. So, I just want more stories out there. We want to get more stories we get out there. And most of it, they're in a metaphysical realm, which of course is your vibe. But there's, go listen to them because there's so many of them, and they cross over into a lot of territory.
I will
So.
do that, and I am open to inspiration to share whatever I'm inspired to share.
Yeah. And you know what? I've never been a marshmallow before.
I don't know why that is so hysterical.
I don't know either, but I love watching people laugh to it. Like they just told me to do this, and I'm like, okay, I've never been a marshmallow before.
Oh my. Oh my.
That's what happens when you listen to the voices. A friend of mine posted something about like, do you have schizophrenia? I'm like, do you hear voices? I'm like, yeah, uh-oh, you caught me.
Indeed. Indeed.
That's fun, Scott. You're always a blast to talk
Well,
to.
thank you. It's been delightful as always, and I hope the next time that you have another inspiration, because I know that there will be plenty of next times.
Yes.
You'll contact me and we'll record another podcast, and who knows what it'll bring up and where it'll lead us. Other than that,
It'll be on purpose.
it'll be worth doing.
Yes, it will. Well, thanks so much. I've just enjoyed it, and I hope we got people watching and listening, and they love it and check us out, and send stories in or whatever they do.
Will do. Okay. All right.
Okay,
All right.
thanks.
Bye.